Mexico is making preparations along its northern border to receive citizens who may be deported from the United States. And President Trump says he is going to challenge a ruling blocking his executive order on birthright citizenship. Good afternoon. I'm Corva Coleman from NPR News, and here are today's top stories. President Trump's press secretary says the administration has arrested hundreds of people who she says are criminals illegally in the U.S. Caroline Leavitt also says the administration has deported hundreds more by military aircraft. Mexico is preparing to receive back its citizens who are deported from the United States. From member station KJZZ, Nina Kravinsky reports the Mexican government has created a program called Mexico Embraces You.
Mexico is setting up 9 centers along the border with the U.S. to provide medical attention, food, and shelter to Mexican citizens who are deported. There will be at least one shelter in each of Mexico's 6 border states. That includes one in Tijuana, south of California, one in Ciudad Juarez, south of Texas, and one in Nogales, south of Arizona. Buses will be available to transport people from the border to those centers and from the centers to their home states. President Claudia Sheinbaum says the country will welcome Mexicans required to leave the U.S. with open arms. According to the Pew Research Center, about 4 million of the 11 million immigrants in the U.S. illegally in 2022 were from Mexico. For NPR News, I'm Nina Kravinsky in Hermosillo, Mexico.
A federal judge in Washington state has temporarily blocked Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. The president is seeking to eliminate that right for some Americans. The federal judge says that is blatantly unconstitutional. Trump says that ruling will be challenged.
Obviously, we'll appeal it. They put it before a certain judge in Seattle, I guess, right? And there's no surprises with that judge.
Many states and cities are suing President Trump, saying the president does not have the right to overturn the U.S. Constitution. President Trump's nominee to be defense secretary has passed a procedural vote in the Senate. Pete Hegseth appears on track to win Senate confirmation, possibly today. Separately, Trump's nominee to lead the Department of Veterans Affairs has won approval from a Senate committee. NPR's Quill Lawrence reports this came as many members of the VA's staff have been exempted from a new federal hiring freeze.
Doug Collins, an Air Force Reserve colonel and former Georgia congressman, was endorsed by the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee 18-1, almost guaranteeing he'll be the next Secretary of Veterans Affairs. During his confirmation hearing this week, he was pressed on whether President Trump's federal hiring freeze would apply to VA. He said he needed to study it. In the meantime, doctors and nurses nationwide who thought they had VA job offers got the news their offers were rescinded. After 2 days of mixed messages, the administration has now exempted the majority of healthcare positions at VA from the hiring freeze. Senate Democrats have urged Trump to protect all VA staff positions from the freeze. Quill Lawrence, NPR News.
The Trump administration has revoked security protection for former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and former Iran envoy Brian Hook. As NPR's Ryan Lucas reports, this comes after President Trump decided to pull the security detail for his one-time national security advisor, John Bolton.
A person familiar with the situation told NPR the administration pulled the security protection for Pompeo and Hook on Wednesday. Mike Pompeo, Brian Hook, and John Bolton had received security details from the U.S. government because of threats from Iran. Iranian officials have publicly stated they want to avenge the death of Qasem Soleimani, an Iranian general who was killed in a U.S. drone strike during Trump's first term in office. The Justice Department charged an Iranian national in 2022 with plotting to kill Bolton. Iran also has plotted against Trump, and the Biden administration beefed up Trump's security this past summer in light of those threats. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
Crime rates continue to fall in many parts of the U.S. New data from a sample of 40 cities offer early insight into possible national trends. NPR's Meg Anderson has more.
Researchers looked at more than a dozen offenses, including homicide, sexual assault, robbery, motor vehicle theft, and burglaries. Shoplifting was the only one that increased in 2024 compared to the year before, by around 14%. Ernesto Lopez, a senior research specialist at the Council on Criminal Justice, says shoplifting likely has increased, but preventing it has also become an intense focus of both police and retailers.
So that really suggests that it's possible there's an increase in reporting and an increase in detection.
The study found violent crime, on the other hand, fell dramatically. Most of those crime rates are now at or below their pre-pandemic levels. Meg Anderson, NPR News.
A new study shows that adults who are diagnosed with ADHD live shorter lives than people without a diagnosis. NPR's Maria Godoy has more.
The study looked at more than 30,000 adults diagnosed with ADHD in the UK. The researchers used national data on mortality rates to estimate their life expectancy. They found that men diagnosed with ADHD were dying 7 years younger on average compared to their counterparts without a diagnosis. Women with ADHD lived an average of 9 years less. Prior research has found that factors including smoking, sleep, exercise, nutrition, and risky driving are key factors behind the shorter lifespans in adults with ADHD. Researchers say these factors are linked to impulsivity, which can be treated. The findings are in line with other research that finds untreated ADHD raises the risk of serious health problems such as diabetes and heart disease. Maria Godoy, NPR News.
A pause on pandas that has been unbearable for some is finally over. 2 giant pandas are now available for public viewing in the nation's capital. NPR's Amy Held reports they are on a 10-year loan from China.
Bao Li and Qing Bao are out of quarantine and in the spotlight. After a 3-month wait and an 8,000-mile trip from China, they now stand or clumsily climb or roll around ready to make their public debut at the Smithsonian National Zoo. Their return after China recalled earlier furry ambassadors marks a reboot of panda diplomacy. For those who can't make it to D.C., the panoply of panda antics is on digital display via the giant panda cam. People are bamboozled by the roly-poly, big-eyed cuteness. Such clips have drawn in millions of viewers. China's also loaned 2 other giant pandas to the U.S., both at the San Diego Zoo, as a gesture of goodwill. Seems the panda appeal is pretty black and white. Amy Held, NPR News.
Thousands of people are lining up at the Botanical Garden in Sydney, Australia to see what's called the corpse flower. It's blooming for the first time in 15 years, but it is famous for its horrible stink. Fans cannot wait to smell what some are calling hot garbage. I'm Corva Coleman, NPR News in Washington.